So, welcome, Ashley. I was really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Yes, I'm looking forward to being here. I'm happy you reached out.
Yeah, and it kind of worked out super easily. I just to give context for anybody and everybody listening, is that I saw a few of your LinkedIn posts and I really liked them and liked how you are helping and empowering people in their job search and finding more rewarding and more also rewarding financially, and probably also growth opportunity wise type of roles. So it's amazing work that you're doing. Can you tell us a little more about what is it that you're doing, and what does it mean to be a job search coach and resume strategist?
Yes. So I started out as a recruiter. So I had been in recruiting for about 7, 8 years before I started my business. And it was because so many people, I started giving tips on Facebook, really is how it started. And I would help individuals who were looking for promotional opportunities or trying to branch into leadership and they needed their resumes updated. So I would help them with that because I looked at resumes all day as a recruiter. And then I also gave interview tips. So because I gained so much traction and I was sort of the go-to person among my friends on Facebook, I decided to go ahead and make everything official. So I had an official side hustle while I was corporate recruiting. So I have experience now about 20 years of recruiting experience. And I have worked in industries like banking, nonprofit. I've recruited in legal, manufacturing, and also healthcare. So I had a broad range of experience, especially interviewing people with different types of positions. So I was able to help job seekers and career professionals who are needing that guidance of the job search process because most people don't understand what happens in the background when it comes to recruiting. They know that they apply online and they know that they get interviews, and the recruiter is sort of leading that whole process of getting them scheduled and deciding whether or not they're qualified for positions. So I started to give the insider secrets of what happened in the background. And that led me into more coaching instead of resume writing. So in addition, well, not instead, but in addition to resume writing, I started doing interview coaching and then also coaching people through the salary negotiation process because that can be sort of tricky and people were concerned about being lowballed and they wanted to get as much money as they could and not leave money on the table based on the tips that I was giving them. So I was able to help tons of job seekers and, like I said, career professionals land more interviews and also inch over into the six-figure mark. So, because that was a goal for a lot of people, especially here in Alabama when we're one of the lowest paying states. So I was providing that support so that they could sort of catch up with the rest of the US when it came to salary and really helping people realize their value so that they know when they're going into certain situations that knowledge is key. So I'm encouraging them to do research and really, that just shaped where I am now in business, more of the job search coaching and working with emerging and experienced leaders, helping them to land more interviews and secure six-figure and multi-six-figure job offers.
I love that. And thank you for explaining it. So it really sounds like it was a natural progression or flow.
Yes, it was. And actually, when I was giving the tips, I really was just trying to raise money for a healthcare nonprofit that I worked for. Because as a salaried employee, we all had goals that we had to reach as far as fundraising. And so I was like, if you make a $20 donation, I'll update your resume or I'll give you some interview tips one-on-one. And it was fun. I enjoy the teaching aspect of the job search. I enjoy meeting with people who may have had a hard time or challenges in their job search and not really understanding how to navigate that whole process. So it really is energizing to be able to work with people from the experience that I gained at work that, I thought, well, I'm just doing my job, and people can actually benefit from understanding more from the back end how that works and how the things that they do in their job search really impact their success.
That's awesome. So you kind of had this opportunity and you started using it, and then you realized that that's actually something that's energizing for you, that you enjoy it. and you're good at
Mhm.
it, and kind of naturally people then come to you for that
Yes.
advice.
Mhm.
It's
And then
amazing.
later in my career, I started to give people more insight into what I had done in my own job searches because I wasn't talking about it from that angle. I was talking about candidates that I interacted with and maybe career leaders or influencers or thought leaders in the area. I would talk about things that we did as coaches and as strategists and as resume writers, but I wasn't really talking about my own personal job search experience. So
Mhm.
now I do share more of that information, and people find it very relatable, and they're like, "What? You're a coach and you messed up? You're a recruiter and you made that mistake?" Yep, I absolutely did, because a lot of my tips come from things that I've screwed up myself. So,
Right? You learn from the experience and from
oh
doing
yeah,
it.
yep, sure did.
Okay, I was going to ask you, so what's the difference between how you coach or what you teach others versus from your own job search strategies?
It is no different. So I coach from a place of I've been there,
Mhm.
and this is what I would have done had I had this information. This is what I know that I should do now. Because I wasn't big on networking, because even though I was in a position as a corporate recruiter to be very social and to talk to a lot of people, that's really not how I perform in my personal life. So in a personal setting, I'm very, social and, bubbly and have a lot of fun, but that's with my core group of people. So when I walk into rooms of people that I don't know, I'm sort of the observer. I don't take the front and center role when I'm in that type of situation. And so I usually describe myself as an extrovert and introvert. So I'm an
Okay.
extrovert when I have to be by work, but I'm very introverted when I'm in social situations. And so teaching people that they can be introverts and you can be quiet, but you also have to, find your voice and use that voice to advocate for yourself. So typically when I work with people who are very shy and they shy away from the whole networking thing, I usually just encourage them and tell them my story about how I overcame being awkward in really social situations, and also finding my groove when I'm networking with people who may have more experience than me, who may work in an industry that I'm not familiar with, and being able to still interact with those people and really not make a fool of myself. So,
Right?
I really enjoy that, and having people come out of their shell and really embrace the whole idea of incorporating networking into their job search, because I didn't do that. And I probably could have been a lot further along and had a lot more opportunities had I tapped into my network.
That is so true because I think when we get a job, and I observe it, I can relate on a couple of things you can, and I think so many people will be able to relate to that extroverted introvert or
Mhm.
turning it on and off when needed, but not necessarily always being an extrovert because so many
Right.
people also are like surprised by it, because you
Yeah, and
say
I think the official
something.
term is like ambivert or something
Okay,
like
okay.
that, but yeah.
Well, we'll make it like understand, like
Yeah, like,
layman
nobody
terms,
who
so
knows
people
that?
understand what we're saying. But I think,
Extrovert and introvert, I think that describes it pretty well.
yeah, exactly. And then the networking, because we can be so heads down when we have a job, we can just like day in and day out, right? We interact with whatever in your role who's needed, right? But then not really, and these can be national, global companies, but that doesn't mean that we're networking or
Right.
building our network, and especially local network. So I love how you brought it up. How important is networking
It's
in a
very
business?
important. Yeah, it's very important. I think you're able to put yourself in front of decision makers when you're networking. You're able to meet people who do what you do or do what you want to do. And that in conjunction with scheduling your informational interviews, and then applying online or submitting your resume, to a recruiter or something like that. In combination, it does help you increase your success faster, right? So it can increase the amount of interviews that you get. It can influence the amount of connections that you have that could be beneficial to you. So when someone is conducting a job search and all they're doing is applying online, they run the risk of closing themselves off to those opportunities because the application process is so saturated. So there's a lot of competition there, but not a lot of people are willing to step out and make those connections. So when you do that, you set yourself apart from the pack, especially when you can find a commonality between you and the person that you're networking with. You can compliment them, you can read their article, you can watch their video, and then reach out to them and share your insights or share, how their information helped you. And that's an awesome way to network. And that person may remember you, especially if nobody else is interacting with them. They're like, oh, I remember Ashley because she's always watching my videos. She's a supporter of mine. And so when there's an opportunity that becomes available, and then that person is the contact person for it, they remember you, they're more likely to refer you for opportunities. So I do encourage people to network with people outside of your normal friend circle, outside of your normal colleague circle, because that's where the magic happens. If the people that were in your current circle could do something for you, they would have done it, right? You could have already had that. So you need to expand your horizons, tap into your network of people. Like I said, tap into industry influencers, tap into, thought leaders, people who do workshops. Talk to those individuals because they can introduce you to the decision makers. They can put you in front of people who make those hiring decisions much faster.
Yeah. And probably beyond your industry, because if the
Yes.
industry goes through the hard time, then like you said, you want to expand.
Mhm.
So a lot
Mhm.
of people get heebie-jeebies, right? They hear networking
Yeah.
and awkward,
It's
and
very
they see a
awkward.
room, with a bunch of people, and now they have to meet 10 people or something. Like, what are your top tips for non-awkward networking, or
Yeah.
networking that's doable for most people? And
Yeah. So I'll
maybe
talk about what I did to get more comfortable with networking. So first and foremost, I took a wing person with me.
okay.
Somebody that can come along with me and soothe my nerves so that way I didn't feel like an outsider, that I always had somebody that was that comfort that if I walked the room and kind of tried to rub elbows a little bit with people and then I started to feel overwhelmed, I always had that person that I can go back to that would, help me calm down, help me like, oh my God, I just made a fool of myself. And I did this and maybe we can laugh about it or whatever. And then, you get back at it. I also try to network with people or go to networking events with people who are in my industry so that I can get comfortable and build that confidence. And then I just asked questions. So that way I didn't have to talk a lot about myself. I really, wanted to learn more about people. And you listen to certain cues, like, what they like to do, because at the networking events, you really don't want to talk about work the entire time. You want to try to get to know people as individuals. So I would ask a lot of questions. And then I would always have an escape route. So if it did become super overwhelming, I knew where to find the bathroom. So that way I can, say, excuse me, I need to, go use the powder room or whatever, just so that it didn't seem like, oh no, I'm going into a panic. So I need to run away, so that I can politely excuse myself. So I always had a way out and I always knew where I was comfortable getting my way in. So if I saw someone and maybe I liked their shoes or maybe we had on similar shoes, that would be a way I can branch into that conversation. And then if I knew that somebody worked for a place that maybe I bought products from that place, that was a way for me to have the conversation. Oh, I'm familiar with your organization. I actually, bought your, it could be plastic containers or whatever, it was. Or my company actually uses your company as a vendor, something like that. I remember going to one networking event and a girl worked at McDonald's. And, that's a well-known brand. So I always asked her what it would, I decided to ask her at that point what it was like to work for such a big, well-known company. Like, do you eat a lot of McDonald's, and stuff like that. And that was I was able to break the ice with that. And we actually tagged along with each other the entire event because we had so much fun and so many things in common. But we didn't have to talk about work. So it wasn't awkward because I wasn't familiar with exactly what she did. I'm in sales because I don't do sales. I'm a recruiter. So she was very interested in my life, interviewing all day. And I was very interested in her life where she's making connections and doing marketing and, and those types of things. So that was an angle I took, and that's what helped me. And I usually share those same similar situations with my clients because they typically will be, very shy and very awkward when it comes to networking, but it doesn't have to be that way. You just need to go in with a plan, know what you're comfortable with, have an escape route. If it's something that, you feel like you may have to sneak away for a little bit just to catch your breath and, and gather yourself. And it usually works out pretty well. I've met tons of people in an industry where I didn't even know other resume writers existed. I didn't even know career coaching was a thing, right? Until I started networking on LinkedIn. And then I started getting introductions and really, joining conversations with people who did what I did or they did what I wanted to do.
Mm, I love that. And how, so there's so many events.
Mhm.
How um y- how does one pick like which events to go to?
So first, I would start with events that help you learn something. So maybe it's a workshop that helps, like I'm a recruiter, so it may be a workshop about a new recruiting software. So other recruiters are going to be there. And then I would network at, say, alumni events. So I would, these are people that we already have something in common because we graduated from the same school. So now you can ask, what year did you graduate? What was your major? Oh, I had that same class or whatever. So you find that commonality with them.
Mhm.
And then also I would say network from the standpoint of I can contribute something. So it may not be an event that's based around your specific experience, but it may be something you can contribute to. So maybe you're going to go to a networking event for, say, real estate. Well,
Mhm.
maybe you do websites, maybe you do business cards, you create the marketing collateral,
Mhm.
right? So you go to events where you could help people streamline their marketing collateral because sometimes people have business cards that are, outdated. They may have brochures that need help that may not be marketing them appropriately. So that may be something that, you can visit. So you can go to be a marketer, but, visit a real estate event or another type of event that involves sales because sales and marketing typically, go hand in hand.
Mhm.
So you can think of it from a way of where how can I help people and go to events where there are people there that may need your type of help or focus on your specific industry or your specific group or association. I would start there. Those are typically the easiest ways to get in without a lot of headache, I would say.
Mhm. And how would you now, like, so yesterday, actually, it's funny, we were talking about it because yesterday I went to a networking event and it
Mhm.
was more, it was like leadership. It was set up as a mentorship where people could go and speak, to senior leaders and ask questions. But the reason I bring it up is because the event, I would say, was mostly filled with job seekers.
Okay.
So let's say you go to these events, right, for chapters, local chapters that are applicable to whether it's something you're learning, right, the industry, but your intention, right, you're looking for a job. How do you stand out and how do you actually make it meaningful and productive?
So I encourage job seekers to always think about what can I give? What can I contribute?
Mhm.
And you do that by asking questions. So if you go in it from a sense of, I want to learn more about everybody else that's here versus me talking about myself, a lot
Mhm.
of times you'll talk yourself into an opportunity, where you get a lot of information from people and you need to keep track of that information. So, make little notes in your phone so you can remember these people, try to connect with them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn offers a QR code
Mhm.
that you can share. And so that's how you can share contact information to stay connected to the people that you meet. But to stand out, you are really finding opportunities that you can help, especially if they're hiring managers there. They may have opportunities available at that time, but they may not necessarily fit what you're trying to do. But you may know somebody in your network who fits those opportunities. So that may be an opportunity for you to say, you know what, you have this position open. I saw it on your website. I have a friend who would be great for that. Can I share your contact information with them? So you guys should meet. And that way you're offering to help them, especially if that manager is saying they're having a hard time filling the position, because sometimes you can find that out at a networking event versus a hiring manager in the business sense revealing that information to you as a candidate. They're not going to say that. So if you meet them on a more personal networking type level, you may be able to help them and be a referral source for them. Now
Mhm.
you're on their radar because they know that you helped them in the past or that you provided some information to them in the past. And you can leverage that when they do have an opportunity available that fits your skill set, that fits your background and credentials. So I think to, just capitalize on it from a standpoint of I want to learn as much about these people as I can and ask as many questions, as I can so that I can take that information back and use it to my benefit.
Yeah, no, wonderful. And so maybe going back to your story,
Mhm.
um, so you said 20 years in recruiting, and in parallel, you started kind of doing the advice and noticing that, you're expanding and you like it. Um, how how did you decide to make the switch? Can you tell us a bit more about the process and the transition?
Yeah, so I really got into full-time resume writing and job search coaching sort of by mistake. I didn't plan to do it. It started out as really a hobby and a side hustle. And I ended up making a mistake, not doing enough research about a job. I had been working at a company for about 8.5 years. And then I transitioned into another area of HR. So I went into more of the generalist side of HR, the HR business partner in that lane. And so, and HR operations. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. That's what I graduated. I got a degree in HR, so I thought that was the lane that I wanted to go. But I ended up landing in recruiting. So when I had this opportunity to branch into more of HR, I was recruited through LinkedIn, and it sounded like an awesome opportunity to be involved in employee engagement. I love employee engagement. I did that a lot at the job that I was at. And I didn't do enough research on the company or the employees. So when I got to that company, right around that 60 to 90-day mark is when I started feeling like, you know what? I don't know that I necessarily fit in here. I don't know that this is the right opportunity that I thought it was going to be because a lot of the things that were promised to me, they didn't happen. So I decided it created a lot of stress for me because I wasn't happy. And I went from a situation where I was mildly happy, but I was just curious and, also, just craving that growth in my career.
Mhm.
So going into a situation where I thought it was going to help me grow, and then actually it was kind of holding me back a bit, it created a lot of stress. And I decided to resign. And I did not have another job at that point. I have been looking sort of passively, but I was not set on I'm going to go and get another job or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'll try to make my business work. And it did. And I stayed in my business full time for about 6 or 7 years. And I still did some recruiting, but more so on the individual small business level. So when if companies in my area didn't have a recruiter, then I stepped in as that recruiter, fill their positions, and then I was done. So it's more on like a freelance kind of contracting basis that I did recruiting. And so that's how I was able to keep up my skills until I was approached about another opportunity to work for a medical devices manufacturing company. So I returned for about 3 years. And then I decided that where my passion really lies is helping my clients and supporting, career seekers. So I'm back full time in my business, doing more coaching than writing, but I still enjoy helping people realize their potential and then also communicate their value on paper and in person. So that's what I do when I'm interview coaching, when I'm resume coaching. It's helping people understand the whole job seeking process. So that's really how, everything came full circle. It wasn't intentional at first. It was more of I can't take it. I can't take it anymore in this toxic work environment. So I'm going to branch out and work in my own business. I'm going to be my own boss. I can create my own environment. I can help others find they're happy again as well, because it's not about all the time finding, more money or whatever. And I know that's what I try to urge people to do is make more money, but it really is about finding peace and finding a job that you enjoy. So it doesn't have to be your dream job, but finding a job that you enjoy.
Mhm. So for you, kind of the puzzle pieces came together because you had
Mhm.
already started, you already had some clients, right? You already had experience
Yes.
doing it.
Mhm.
You had tried it out. It's kind of like, I think many times, like something that's meant for us, it comes,
Mhm.
mm, ease,
It usually just
Yeah,
materializes. It falls
yeah,
into place the way that it is, like it's almost like you find your purpose.
yeah.
And not that it is not a challenge, because entrepreneurship was probably the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. But it helped me, working in corporate helped me decide the things that I wanted to do in my business and the things that I did not want to do in my business. And I think that was, having that experience on both sides, especially recently, it helps me relate to a lot of my clients as well, because, I've worked in a toxic work environment. I've been laid off before. I've bombed an interview before.
Yeah,
I've not negotiated a salary before.
yeah,
I've negotiated a salary and then still got to work and found out that somebody else was making more than me. So I didn't negotiate effectively. So I've
yeah.
made pretty much every mistake that I coach my clients not to make. And that's because I've been there, and I like to encourage people and have them understand that even if you make a mistake, even if something doesn't work at one job, you always have an opportunity to reinvent yourself and to start over fresh and new at another opportunity. It may be a struggle, it may be hard to find another opportunity, but you have to course correct as you go along, but you can recover. You can recover. Just because something happened in your job, you are not your job. You go to work, and
Hmm.
and you're responsible for performing on that job, but that job is not you. You are the individual. You are people hire you because you are authentic. People hire you because you offer a certain benefit to them, personality wise or experience wise, but your job situation doesn't define you as a person. You get to decide how you show up.
Do you feel or do you see that people lose that perspective?
They do, especially when they're rejected over and over again. You start to personalize that and say, well, what's wrong with me?
Yep.
Something has to be wrong with me if nobody wants me. But a lot of times it's not the person, it's what the person is doing or what the person is not doing. It may be just a shift in strategy, because I can have two clients with the exact same experience, working at the exact same companies, and their job search experience is completely different. So one may be super successful and find a job, within 4 or 5 weeks, and then another, it may take them months upon months. But it's just everybody's job search is going to be different. It doesn't mean that you offer something less. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It's just that you may need to take a step back, evaluate what you're doing, and then come up with another plan. If you talk to two different, or maybe, two, three different career coaches or job search coaches or resume writers, they're going to have 5 to 10 different ways that you can accomplish that same goal. So you have to be willing to, like I said, course correct, do things differently, and, keep adjusting until something, pans out.
Hmm. So what would, from working with people, I'm just thinking, generalizing, I mean, very, very much generalizing, but like most people want more money, bigger title, right? And what do you see as a coach? What are the top reasons that are holding us back from getting there, materializing there?
Yeah, I see that a lot. I think the number one thing is not being able to communicate that value that you bring, whether that's on paper or in person. So sometimes people are very comfortable speaking about what it is that they do, but they forget to talk about the problems that they solve. So they're good at telling you how much experience they have, what companies they've worked for, but not telling you about the value, whether, they saved money, they made money, they built relationships, they improved processes. They're unable to speak to that. And then on the other end, you have people who are still comfortable maybe speaking about what it is that they do, but on paper, they can't articulate it in a way that matters. They have a hard time building the resume or keeping it nice, like clear and concise. They have a hard time doing that. And so
Mhm.
that's where I help them kind of realize the value that they bring that's relevant to the opportunity that they want, and helping them look like the positions that they want to be in, because you have to be able to play the part. You need to be who you are, who you want to be on paper. You have to have the person that is reading your resume, they have to visualize you as you're already in this job. And so you have to write your resume in a way that helps them, that entices them, that influences that decision for them to give you a call. And I think that's where most people struggle, is not that they don't have the experience, it's not that they don't have the value, they really do. Especially when they've laid off, they start to think like, oh, something was wrong with me because they
Right.
laid me off and they kept this group of people, but I was let go. 9 times out of 10, it's just a business decision. It just boils down to money. It doesn't mean that you are any less valuable than the person that got to stay, because you never know. In 6 months, they may get their turn, to be laid off as well. So, I mean, I felt like that when I was laid off, and it was hard for me to really communicate the good things that I had done, because I was so worried about what were the bad things that I did that caused me to get laid off, when it really was just a restructure and a business decision of why I was laid off. It was nothing I could do. It had nothing to do with my performance. I had the performance evaluations to prove it. But it doesn't, I guess it doesn't make you feel any differently when you're being told no at every corner. But I like to tell people that no is a complete sentence everywhere else, but in the job search.
Okay.
When you're job searching, it's no right now. Not
Okay.
right now. And so if you continue, to continue on your course, continue making a difference, continue making an impact, your right fit role will appear. But you have to be ready for that. You have to be in the right mindset for that to receive it. And you can't, like I said, you can't internalize when things don't work out. I would open positions as a recruiter and get, 100 applications. So guess what? If I hired somebody, I had to send 99 rejections, right? So that's just the way that the numbers work. So if you're only applying online and you're getting those rejections, that's because they can only hire one person. So your chances of getting that, it's 1 out of 99 or 1 out of 299, however many people apply for that role. So
Mhm.
it's not that you don't have experience. I had to send rejections to awesome candidates all the time, but I can only hire one. I only have a slot for one. So that
Mhm.
means I still have to reject the other person who was just as qualified, just as valuable. It just may have been one little thing that tipped the scale. And that could have been, any reason. It could have been that they knew a certain software better than you did. It could have been that they articulated one response better than you did. But it doesn't mean that, you need to just throw throw in the towel and say that I'm not going to job search anymore because I keep getting rejections.
So I'm glad you bring it up because I think it's also on your page where I saw it about the current job market and what would you recommend for somebody, whether they're in a job or they've been laid off and they're actively looking for a job, of what actually works in this market? Because like the applying, to your point, like jobs get 100, 200 applicants within hours of posting in some areas. So that's not an effective job search strategy, or should be
Right.
very because you're against, again, you might never be looked at, most likely at those numbers. Then reaching out to LinkedIn, people are not hearing back, recruiters are not responding to proactive kind of like, hey, I want to connect with you, or the managers, it's just silence for the
Mhm.
most part. Like, so what would you say in this job market would be your top most kind of meaningful needle
Mhm.
moving tips?
Yeah, so I want to address the recruiters not responding.
Mhm.
So typically, when a position is posted, especially on LinkedIn, the recruiter's information is linked to that. So you
Mhm.
have to think about it. If hundreds of people are looking at that position, they're all seeing that this recruiter is the contact. So it's hard for that recruiter to be able to filter through hundreds of messages, plus filter through hundreds of candidates, plus answer questions and support their business units that they're hiring for. So it's a very oversaturated process for you to reach out to the recruiter every time. So yeah, they're the point of contact, but you can get into the hiring manager from a different avenue. Because when you think about it at work, if you have a work buddy, or you're working on a project and you're working on cross-functional teams on something, You have exposure to people who are in accounting, who are in finance, who are in IT or whatever, and you want a job in HR. You can access those people who work in a completely different department. And if they are connected to the decision makers, well, that can be your way in. But most people think they know the first stop is the hiring manager or the recruiter. And a lot of times they're bombarded. So
Mhm.
they can't answer every message and then, create a positive candidate experience. So, so that's something that's in the system that's sort of broken, right? So it's usually not personal. And then sometimes people will get on LinkedIn, post a job, and they're not active on LinkedIn. So they may not even see your messages because I, for one, have my notifications on messages turned off. And that's because I get so many emails, so much outreach, from people that it is distracting to me and I need to be able to do my job.
Mhm.
And then I can respond to my messages. At that point, I'm one who likes to respond to every single message. I like my inbox to be clear of, any messages before I leave for the day. I have to have it. It will worry me to death if I don't have all of my messages covered. But every recruiter does not have that. Every recruiter is not as efficient as the next, right? And they have different processes and different ways of working. But in order for your job search to be effective, you need to have a healthy amount of research, applying, and networking.
Mhm.
Can some people get jobs just by applying online? Absolutely, every day. But it depends on what that opportunity is.
If you're in AI right now.
Right, right. It really depends. So sometimes you can apply online and do nothing else, but the chances of that happening, you're the exception if that is happening for you. If you are, successful enough that or lucky enough that people are responding to your applications and everything and all you're doing is applying online, well, lucky you, because that's not the norm for everybody else. So other people have to have a healthy amount of networking and also researching informational interviews, and they may have to do something outside of that normal hiring process in order to land their interviews and get those offers.
And what do you recommend, like, for informational interviews, right? Do you recommend going in with this goal? Like, my goal is X to get Y from this person or this interaction, or what's your approach?
Yeah, so you should have some objectives going into the process, but that objective should not be that this person is going to get me a job, right? So when you're having informational interviews, you're trying to learn as much as you can about the organization, about maybe the department, maybe about projects or upcoming initiatives, at the company. You're learning about that person's journey within the company or within the industry. So it's not you going in and like, can you get me a job? That's not it, because 9 times out of 10, no, that person cannot get you a job. So you go into it, not that you want to just take. You're asking them all the questions. You're not providing anything of value to them. I would say when you ask your informational questions, and then the next thing needs to be, what can I do to support you? And I ask people that when I connect with them on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for connecting with me. What can I do to support you? And
Mhm.
it could be
Oh,
something
you
as
did
simple
that
as,
with me, I think.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually ask when somebody says, thank you for connecting with me. And I say, yeah, I'm happy to connect. How can I support you? That's one of the first things that I ask, because I want to know really the reason why you connected with me. But I also want to let you know that I'm a resource, that I'm there to support you. Sometimes it may be as simple as, well, can you give it, read my article and, provide some feedback? And when I have the time, absolutely. If I'm engaging on LinkedIn, then I want to make sure that I'm commenting on, people's posts just as much as I want them to comment on mine, that I'm giving reactions and showing that support, because I would appreciate that in return. But I'm going to be a giver first and then a taker second. So you want to make sure that it's a give and take relationship, giving first and not a take and take. And I think that's where a lot of job seekers get it wrong, because I get messages all day. Hey, can you help me get a job?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not how it works. Who are you? I don't know what you want, what you want to do. I don't know your situation. So when you ask questions like that of recruiters, you're creating more work for them. Hey, can you look at my resume and tell me, what I need to fix?
Mhm.
No, because that's really not how it works. You're creating more work
Mhm.
for the recruiter. So if it would be better if you ask those questions that are geared more towards, I read the job posting, I researched the company, but I'm interested in this. So something that's not no-brainer information that you could have just Googled. You want to ask very intuitive questions, and you want to be very intentional in your outreach. So those informational type situations, yeah, you're not going to be able to, and you need to be mindful of who you're asking that of to, because the recruiter, no, is not going to have 15 minutes to talk to you about your resume. 9 times out of 10, not in the, the normal business day, right? Because they're doing interviews, they're screening candidates, they're directing hiring managers through the process. So to ask a recruiter to then, hey, can you look at my resume and tell me what jobs I'm qualified for? No, that's creating more work for that person. So a more intentional question is, hey, I've applied for a couple of these roles. This one in particular, I'm very interested in. I thought I did a good job of applying my skills and my value in it. Is there something that's on the job posting that maybe, or that's not on the job posting that maybe the hiring manager is looking for? Because sometimes we do have those special requirements that aren't listed. So maybe that's something you can ask that recruiter versus you asking them to look at your resume and then provide line by line feedback on your resume. That's a big ask for somebody that you don't know, and to ask for it for free.
That's good. I think it's a common misperception that misconception that the recruiters are resume writers, first of all.
Mhm. Yep, yep. And it's a
Yeah.
misconception. Yeah, it's also a misconception about what different recruiters do, because there are in-house corporate recruiters like me.
Yeah.
And then there are agency recruiters who work more so for agencies. So they work to fill positions for a client. An in-house recruiter works for that particular company and filling those in-house positions. So an in-house recruiter does not work for you.
Mhm.
They work for the company. So
Yeah.
to ask a recruiter to do something to work for you, that's outside of their scope of business. But
Yeah.
an agency recruiter, they're marketing you to a particular client, right? So they may be able to give you some insights on your resume because that's how they get paid. So they may update your resume, but an in-house recruiter, most likely that person is not going to make adjustments to your resume at all.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's a document too, right? I mean,
Mhm.
also a legal document, your application. Um, so I wanted to ask you, I was thinking, as you were talking about, like I keep thinking about your journey, and
Mhm.
like if somebody else is, right now they've had a career, right, for years that's been successful in a discipline, right, in a
Mhm.
field, but it's no longer, maybe never was, and you just, in your 20s, you just kind of like many times bump around, bump into, a career track, and then you kind of go for
Yeah.
advancement, right? Like put in your time and then you get promoted, get your salary increases. And then, maybe 10, 15 years down the road, realize, y- your resume might be filled with things. I don't know if you've heard this saying, my resume is filled with things that I never care to do again.
Right.
You
Mhm.
know, so but they don't have that kind of how you had those breadcrumbs where you started doing
Mhm.
things and found that there was really, something there for you. They have no idea what should they pivot to.
Yeah.
What
Uh,
would be your advice?
yeah. So I think we all have nuggets from jobs that we had that we loved to do. And then we have those things that, like you said, I don't care to do that ever again. For me, it is, I used to, and this is definitely going to date me, but I helped a couple of companies go from paper to electronic, right? I don't ever care to do that again. It's a very cumbersome process. It took a whole lot of time, and it's a bunch of kind of, I don't know, busy work, and
Mm,
that's not what I enjoy. And so what I noticed was by putting that on my resume, as I applied for positions, that's what those companies zoned in on. And they're like, oh, you can do that for us. So then I got stuck
mm, mm,
doing that thing, right? That I don't want to do ever again. But once I just completely deleted it, even though it was a success for me, It was it was an achievement bullet, because I took a company from, manual to, to electronic. And once I took that off my resume, it was no longer a part of my job.
Mm,
And so, sometimes when you have these things that you don't want to do, you have to make a list of these are things that I want from a job. These are things that I don't want from a job. And sometimes you can search around those parameters. So if it's something that you like to do, so say you were a teacher or a counselor, well, you like working with people, but you don't want to do it in a counseling setting. Okay, think about the jobs that allow you to work to interface a lot with people. Maybe it's customer service, maybe it's sales, so what are those things that you want to do? Oh, well, I want to work from home. Okay, well, then there are customer service positions that allow you to work from home. There are sales positions that may allow you to work, remotely, but you still have to travel throughout your territory. Right. So you start to think about, okay, these jobs do this, and it really, you can search your way from, from a competency standpoint instead of a job title, because you don't know what the title is because different companies call it different things. You can also take assessments. Assessments like DISC. I'm a DISC profile assessment administrator. So I have people take a career discovery version of the DISC profile to help them find out what their attributes are naturally, in their personal life as well as in their professional life. So as they're reviewing these job recommendations, they can understand from the job posting whether or not this job is going to have them doing something that causes stress for them naturally, because all of us accept a certain amount of stress from our jobs,
mhm,
but it's how much are you willing to take before, it's like, okay, this is too much, I can't do it any longer. So, like for me, networking stresses me out. Just, it always has, right? But it's a healthy amount of stress. And so when I'm in networking situations, I know that I'm not going to be networking every single day. And I also know that I'm more comfortable networking online than I am networking in person. So I get to choose how I show up in
mhm,
those type situations. So I think when you're in that career discovery mode, start with maybe an assessment, but you want to do a self inventory. What is it that I truly enjoy? What did I enjoy about those past jobs? And seeing if you can incorporate that and sell from a transferable skills basis, and then get rid of the stuff on your resume that you don't want to ever do anymore. Focus only on those transferable skills, and then you get away from doing the things that you don't want to ever do again, like me doing
mhm.
paperless stuff.
That's great. So, and as far as so you're talking about also these natural strengths, aptitudes, or inclinations, right, that come easier to kind of getting clear on those. Is the career discovery disc like the best tool that you've seen or found to be most accurate? Because I think people
Well,
struggle. They
it's the
take
one that
tests.
I'm most familiar with, but you can do other assessments like strength finders.
Mhm.
That really, I've taken that assessment before. There's I think Myers-Briggs. You can take those types of assessments to, to find those things. But, just because I'm a DISC administrator, I'm more familiar with that. That's what I used throughout my career, even at different companies where I worked,
Yeah.
it's a pretty big thing. So that's kind of, I naturally went into, down the lane with the DISC profile, but there are tons of them. There's also, so you may have to pay for those types of assessments, but there are free assessments that you can take online that, and you pretty much can, can Google those assessments, but Career One Stop .org is associated with the employment agency. It's a government program, and you can actually go to that website and take a lot of different assessments, and you can take assessments to find out about your personality. You can also take assessments for job matching, so it will, based on your responses, tell you that, based on your profile, you would fit for these types of jobs, or you may find these jobs interesting. And it's funny that it's anytime I take those assessments, it either tells me that I need to be in sales or teaching. So
And you're teaching.
yep. So I'm like, yep, got one of them. But and then
Oh,
I
and you
guess I
kind of
could
have to
say that I
sell
did
too, right?
sales too because of recruiting. I did have to, that sales is involved in, or recruiting involves sales where you're actually selling the position or selling the company to candidates. So they're pretty accurate.
Yeah, or even your own business, right?
Yep, yep, they're pretty accurate.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, since you're doing disc, I'm sure you've done your own disc because
Mhm.
the context is I think many people take these tests, but then they're like, what it's hard to translate for like most people into, it's kind of entertaining information, but they have a hard time translating into figuring out what job would be fulfilling
Mhm.
for them if the current job is not and is more draining than fulfilling.
Right, right. And so when I administer the disc profile, it actually has a section of and it's very conversational. So it's almost like somebody's talking to you about yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when you read it, you're like, yeah, you know me. This is
I
so
feel
me.
like somebody sees you, right?
Yep. It's very eye-opening because sometimes it points out things that you didn't think of, and you're like, yeah, that is right. And then at the end of that assessment, it does give job recommendations based on your results of the disc. So a lot of profile assessments are shifting into providing job recommendations as
Mhm.
well, based on that. And then there are opportunities to, actually go to ONET,
Okay.
which that is tied into the disc assessment that I administer. And so you can actually go to that site and look at all the different job opportunities that are recommended to you based on the results of your disc. So it doesn't say that you should do this absolutely. It's like because of this in your personality, this job is a match. Because of this in your personality, this job is a match. So they give you several different options, because I have a joy for healthcare as well, but it wasn't necessarily recommended, for the disc. So none of it is just set in stone that you have to do it, but at least it can point you in the right direction.
Yeah,
And you can sort of make adjustments along the way to find out, what your groove really is.
that's amazing. So that UNET, did you say?
It's ONET. Hmm.
ONET. And
Hmm. Yeah, it's
it,
the letter O and then net.
and is it the disc like linking like kind of estimating which personality traits the job employs, or is it the employer?
Yes.
Is it
So
certain
it'll have,
people?
so one section of the disc, it gives you information like, in these types of situations, you tend to perform like this. In
Hmm.
these types of situations, you react like this. In your personal life, you react this way to those types of situations. So, with that information, you can look at the job posting. And if the job is asking for you to, speak at multiple events a week, and your disc has told you that in those situations, you tend to stress out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you will probably think about it and say, you know what, this job in the long run, I may not be able to keep up with this because I can only operate outside of my comfort zone for so long. So for instance, if I'm in a situation where I'm doing a lot of heavy networking and heavy people interaction, I am drained by the end of the day. So
Yeah.
for me to do that repeatedly, that's going to impact, for one, my mental health, but impact the way that I'm able to show up at work. So I'm knowing that about myself. I'm very careful when I select opportunities that I want to apply to, or events that I want to go to, because I know that I perform in a certain way naturally when I'm in those types of situations. So it does help you sort of navigate it could be your feelings, navigate your personality, navigate where really where, again, just where you perform best. And having that information can help you make better decisions about the opportunities that you accept. So if again, if you know that you perform better when you're working in an office versus being at home or being away from the office. Some people don't perform well in that sense because they thrive off that people interaction. For
Yeah.
me, I get much more done when I'm by myself. And even though I love to interact with people, and sometimes I do miss the lunch dates, but and I set sometimes work dates and
Mhm.
and all of that just to get that people interaction that I need, but it's not so overwhelming that I feel like I need to go run and hide at that point. But again, the disc helped me understand that about myself, that I do perform better when I'm able to get by myself, because sometimes I can get a little chatty when I'm with, my core group of people. And so if I'm at work and I've got my work bestie, I may not get much done, So being able to, to kind of step away from that so that I can focus, so that I can get my work done. And then I have, my hour or, my little breaks in between where I can interact with people.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can kind of, the better you know yourself and
Mhm.
these natural strengths or things that come easier to you, and the more you can architect, right, something that is more fulfilling
Right.
and in line with that, and it also gives you the words, right? It also lets you articulate, I think, better throughout different stages, whether it's on your resume or your interviews, if that's what you end up doing. And after understanding. But I'm just thinking, okay, as people, let's say, do one of those tests and they understand, okay, I'm really strong at always learning, right? That's one of the themes. I'm really good at curiosity or asking questions.
Right.
How do they like reverse engineer it if they don't know the title
Mhm.
with jobs to search for? How do they figure out what job it could be a match for, if it's not these obvious like sales or marketing?
Right. Um, I think there's several ways that they can tackle this. One of the simplest things that I do when I don't have the information that I need is just Google, right? So it is possible for you to Google something like let's see, if you like researching. So you
Mhm.
may be somebody who loves to read, loves to, just find out things. You're very, very curious.
Mhm.
Then you could Google and say, what jobs are good for people that are curious, right? And then that'll take you down a path of it may, definitely with AI, you could
Yeah.
definitely ask ChatGPT, if I
Yeah.
like doing these things, what type of jobs involve these types of tasks, right? And so it will spit back out, a list of things that you can possibly do.
Mhm.
So that kind of cuts out you having to do all of the searching and, and everything on your own for, through Google. You can also work with a career professional. One thing I know that people fail to do a lot is tapping into their alumni associations, tapping into their advisors at the schools where they graduated. So if got a degree somewhere, call those advisors, ask them for help. A lot of times they have assessments that you can take as well that will help you kind of streamline, your wants, your desires, your dislikes, and the pros and cons of working in certain industries. And then you can start to narrow down the types of positions or the titles from there. So there are a lot of, free things that you could do to find out what you want if you're not able to, if you don't have access to a coach or a mentor. But I would say definitely don't go it alone.
Mhm.
Yeah, because then you get wrapped up in your own head and you sort of get overwhelmed with the whole process. And then you may be looking at stuff and say, oh, I want to do everything. I want to do that. I like to do that. And then you
Yeah.
find, oh, but I'm not qualified for that. And it can be, it could be a little bit overwhelming, discouraging. It could be fun or, however you want to slice it. But I think going at it alone is the big mistake that people make as well. But you have to start somewhere. And I think, just tap into the resources that are given to you, especially, by the government, by your school, even a job where you got laid off. They may offer some sort of, package or, something within your severance. They may offer those career services to you. So those are things that you would want to ask. Ask someone, where can I find resources? And a lot of times, if you tap into your career services department at the school where you graduated, or even your local school, if you did not graduate, because not everybody has a degree, not everybody went to school, but you can tap into that because a lot of times they are community partners. So they partner with organizations that do provide the resources to you. Your employment agency has resources to help you find jobs, to help you with your resume, to help you with your cover letter, to help you even with interviewing. Your library, tap into those resources. Those are free resources. And if they're not free for everybody, I mean, your tax dollars are going to it, so you may as well use it.
Mhm. So what
Mhm.
would you so I find that we try to DIY our
Mhm.
career most.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's a sweeping generalization, but what I see is like most people are trying to DIY it. I mean, I've done it
I
myself,
did.
so
Yep.
guilty. But
Mhm.
what would you say is the biggest loss or miss in doing that? And what's the like value of having somebody, a coach, right?
Mhm.
Somebody to help you guide you through that process instead of doing it alone?
So I think when you go to DIY, so some people can DIY. They can. That's something, maybe they're good writers, maybe they're good at explaining what they do, but someone who knows that they're not good at it, you're not good with formatting documents, you're not good with, wordsmithing, with, telling a compelling story, and then you go and try to, maybe use a template, or maybe you're copying what somebody else is doing, you miss that personal branding element, to your document. So you're telling a story, but it's not really yours, and it's not really interesting either, because it's just a copy and paste of something that you found somewhere. So there's no individualization in that whole process. So that's a mistake, for one thing. Then you look at how much time it takes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's times when people, book 1 hour sessions with me to do some updates to their resume that had taken them weeks to even come up with what they gave to me, right? And then in an hour session, because this is what I do, because this is my zone of genius, I'm able to see things from a different angle because I'm not emotionally tied to what you did at work. I'm not emotionally tied to the situation where your manager may have gotten credit, for something that you did, right? I'm just asking the questions of what you did. I don't care about all the politics and everything that were involved with it. And sometimes we can't get out of our own heads enough to think about the accomplishments that we have. So having someone who doesn't know you, who is curious about what you do, curious about the things that you've done in your career, and can really ask those probing questions to pull that information out of you and then piece it together so that it tells a complete, compelling story and doesn't seem so disjointed and all over the place. Because some people do that, they DIY their resumes and they end up being, everything in it but the kitchen sink. It's really a digital junk drawer of,
Yeah.
things that they've done throughout their career. And it's hard to separate yourself from that. So those are the biggest mistakes I see when it comes to the DIY. But, there are people who are really good at it. But, when you're not, you're
Mhm.
just not. You're just not
I
good at
agree
it.
with you.
You need to get some help.
Yeah. And what difference does it make in income, in lost income,
Oh, yeah,
for
it does.
fulfillment?
Mhm. Yeah, it makes a difference because how you communicate yourself on paper usually is indicative of what you're going to say in an interview, because your resume a lot of times drives that conversation. So if I'm seeing something interesting on your resume, I want to talk about those things that are on your resume. And so in those conversations, I can decide that you have way more experience than I thought. So that means that you're, more than likely worth more money than I thought. But if you are not explaining the impact that you made, the value that you're bringing, it does impact your salary. So those who are not able to communicate their successes, communicate their accomplishments and their achievements, typically earn less than somebody who may not have done such a good job, but the way they describe it, it sounds like they added a whole lot of value. And so they are able to, to get a salary that aligns with that.
This is why it's kind of like on the other side, like it's interviewing and looking for a job and landing a job is a different skill set than you could be good at your job,
Mhm.
but interviewing and the whole all the elements of the job search or even just the interviewing piece, like it's a whole different skill set.
Yep. And and like I said, I find people who have awesome resumes, but when I start to talk to them, they can't really back up anything that they said. And that's because they're just used to doing the work, and they're not used to talking about the things that they do. They're not used to articulating what that value is. Even though they know that they did a good job, and maybe their supervisor did a performance evaluation and they can pull information from that. But what happens when, they don't do performance evaluations? I've been places where, not everywhere did performance evaluations. They should have, they were supposed to, but they didn't. Or if they did, it wasn't enough to really give me anything to grow upon. It was really just kind of checking boxes to say that they did the performance evaluation. So
Mhm.
you can't depend like on your managers or on, your leadership, especially when you're trying to be in those leadership roles yourself. You can't depend on other people to communicate the value that you bring, even if they're in charge of, building your job description, so they can tell you what you do by way of the job description, but that's usually not true to life. You end up doing things that are above and beyond what's listed in your job description. It doesn't account for the work that you did better than other people, so you have to take charge and document the successes that you had. You have to take control really of your own career goals and make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do, because when it's time for those performance evaluations, a lot of times your manager is not even aware of the great things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. They're
Mhm.
just looking at the results in pieces. So maybe they only know part of the process. They don't know what struggle you went through to build that relationship. They just know it was built. They
Mhm.
don't know what steps you had to take to save the money. They just know that you saved it. So all that context is what the job seeker is responsible for. So if you're in leadership, if you're, trying to advance into senior leadership, you are responsible for making sure that you create that narrative around the way that you lead other people, inspire action, the way that you motivate people. And so that's what I do when I'm talking to people who are, because again, my client base is mostly leaders or people wanting to excel into senior leadership.
Mhm.
So that's the focus. I have to get them from thinking like an individual contributor into thinking like somebody who actually inspires change, somebody who motivates people to do other things, somebody who trains and develops other people. And so that's a different skill set than someone who is just doing a task, doing a project because that's what was assigned to them. So you have to know how to talk about yourself in a much different way in order to, get to that next level for people to believe that you belong at that level.
Mhm. And how often do you see people staying in jobs and environments or companies for too long when they could have gone for promotions for
Yeah.
more money?
Yeah, sometimes it's all due to comfort. You are comfortable with that bad situation
Mhm.
because at least you know what to expect.
Mhm.
And so, and it's very similar to relationships too, especially when there's abuse, when you're being abused at work, when your supervisor is talking to you crazy, disrespecting you, when you feel targeted, and and all of that. A lot of times, people will stay still because they're just stuck. It's paralyzing to be in a position that you feel like, well, I thought I liked this position, but I don't like what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And I'm afraid that if I go somewhere else, I may be in a worse situation. So
Mhm.
they decide to stay in the comfort of what they already know
Mhm.
versus branching out to do something else, or they just get in the rhythm of they're just on autopilot.
Mhm. Or
They're not
proving
really, yeah,
themselves.
they're not really growing, but but it's easy. It's easy and the money may be okay. They're able to pay their bills. It's
Yeah.
just a job. But to actually get a job that you enjoy, that gives you that professional development that you may crave, you have to branch out into the unknown. It could be scary, and it's scary for a lot of people. The unknown is scary for me, too, but you have to sort of see beyond that and get the support that you need so that you can, navigate that process and go ahead and take that leap and take that chance so you can push forward in your career.
Can you share like a transformational, and without name, right? But like of somebody going from something that they didn't like, right? That wasn't fulfilling
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, so I worked with a client who was working in IT and wasn't really happy with that situation because they weren't allowed to grow. I think their supervisor did quite a bit of micromanaging, but then also didn't do anything for professional development. So they were stuck in kind of the humdrum of the repetition of their job doing tech support. But then wanting to, to grow and learn and stretch themselves, the manager wanted to keep them stuck because they didn't like change. So in applying for, multiple jobs within their same company, they were being held back, like, oh no, you're not ready for this opportunity, or no, I'm not going to approve for you to apply for this new job because you're not ready. Well, it's not that the employee wasn't ready, the manager wasn't ready to let go because they were on autopilot too.
Mhm.
So looking out and then feeling like, okay, well, I have nothing of value to offer. I do the same thing every day. I'm not able to grow. I've been doing this for years, but they had built a lot of relationships. So they became the go-to person for certain things. And they were learning because of those relationships, because they were helping people solve their problems. And so we were able to work together and put those pieces together, and they were able to finally move over into another department where they're able to grow. They're working for a supervisor that is really that encourages them to learn more, that pushes them beyond the capabilities that they even knew that they had, a manager that trusts them to do things differently. So I think that was very transformational, and the confidence that comes with that, I mean, it skyrocketed. So I love to see those situations where people, feel like their job is shrinking them,
Mhm.
and, and they feel very small and unappreciated, to
Mhm.
land an opportunity and it's a complete opposite, and they're able to blossom and shine. And usually that person is promoted pretty quickly, after that, because they're so eager to learn, they're so hungry, for that next step, that they're able to, progress pretty quickly. Whereas in the last position, they may have been there 5, 6 years still doing the same thing, hating for their alarm to go off every morning when it's time to get up.
Right.
Mhm.
I love that. And I think it goes kind of with the theme of expansion. And I think what I've seen is that I think pretty quickly, you get a sense if the current leadership and the culture values you or not.
Yes.
If you're getting watered, like a
Hmm.
plant needs
Yep.
water, right? Sunshine,
Yep.
or not. And then I think it's very, very key to look for the environments that water you, right? So you
Yeah.
can thrive and
Mm.
grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think within that first 30 to 90 days, really in that first 90 days, whether or not that company is a toxic place to be,
Mhm,
because you're getting little nuggets along the way that are cluing you in. And
mhm,
so I think at that point, you have enough comprehensive
mhm,
information to
mhm,
review to see, like, is this a place that I want to stay? And I think a lot of times we stay in situations that we shouldn't be in, or that we can move out of, for fear
mhm,
of how that looks on our resumes.
mhm,
And so then you're worried so much about the resume and what the next person may think about you, or how they may judge you based on that resume, because being called a job hopper, it has, it's a negative connotation,
yeah,
right? And so you want to encourage people to go after their dreams, and to, you would tell somebody, get out of that abusive relationship. You would encourage them to leave. So why is it that when they're being mentally, abused or mistreated in a work situation, we penalize them for getting out of that situation? And it's really weird to me, because the mental health strain, it is very similar to, like, to people who are truly being abused in relationships,
mhm.
because
Oh
some
my God, it does
supervisors
damage.
are downright abusive, because that mental abuse, and you're constantly being talked down to, you're constantly being berated, you're constantly feeling like you're very small. Like, that it creates stress. It makes, people have anxiety, depression, and everything, because of these jobs that are beating them down. Yet there's this negative stigma about people who choose to get out of those situations faster than others. I think if we all left situations that were no longer serving us, we would not have stable um, resumes. We would not have the stability that we have on our resumes. I stayed in a lot of positions longer than I should have, just because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a job hopper. I've only been here a year. It's going to look bad on my resume. And I would love to see our culture shift into not caring,
Mhm,
listening to the reason why somebody left a position, and not automatically thinking that it's them, that they're the problem.
mhm,
And there shouldn't be this negative thing for, you should be proud of somebody who chose to get out of a situation, that was dragging them down, mentally and even physically, because that stress over time, it creates a lot of issues. I mean, I remember having migraines. I remember having very bad GI issues. I remember, crying on the way to work and on the way to home, and, going to my car to cry during lunch, because I was in a situation that I wanted to get out of, but everybody is beating it in my head that, oh no, you can't do that because you're going to look like a job hopper, or you can't do that because it's too soon, it's too quick. You need to stick it out. You need to try to make it work. When a lot of times, no, it's not worth making it work. Yeah, you need to just go ahead and get out of that situation as quickly as you can, and and find a way to to tell a more um I guess more positive story when you're interviewing around that whole situation, that it really just was not a fit. You don't have to go into the fact that, oh, the environment was toxic, I didn't like my boss, they were micromanaging and and doing all this. You don't have to go into all of that. You just need to share, like, this wasn't a fit and I'm applying for this opportunity because I feel like it's closer to my core values, that my
Yeah.
I will be able to learn more in this position, and that's what I was missing in my last role. So I feel like, find a way to frame it in a positive way when you're interviewing and talking about that job that you left a little bit too soon, right? But don't, try not to stay. If you can get help and work it out and, and talk it out, okay, that's all fine and great, but that's not usually everybody's story. That's
Yeah.
not usually how it works. They are beat down to the point of they have no choice but to leave. And that's terrible. It's a terrible
And then,
situation.
but then,
But I see it quite a bit.
yeah, because I mean, like those kind of situations, then they do damage. I mean, by the longer, right, the more toll it takes on you. But
Right.
like, it's interesting when you say that. I have started looking at people who have changed jobs that, like, I completely changed my view. I think with time and your own perspective
Mhm.
and experience, that they've had more courage to try things.
Right. And they may have achieved a lot in that very short period of time. And you also have to look at, because when I had hiring managers that would push back because people, oh, they're a job hopper. And I was like, okay, but I've talked to this individual and they've explained to me what they did in every move. And a lot of times they were moving to make more money. They were moving because their spouse got a job and and was moving places. So, of course, are you expecting this wife to stay behind when her husband is moving around, or you expect this husband to stay put and his wife is moving around? That's not fair. So, what would you tell your child to
Yeah.
do? Would you tell your child to stay in a situation that was hurting them, that was harming them, that was making them feel bad about themselves? 9 times out of 10, they would say, no, I wouldn't tell them to stay. Okay, then why are you expecting this person to stay?
Mhm.
If you wouldn't stay through that, why are you expecting it from someone else? And who told you that somebody that job hops is not loyal? They are leaving because they're lacking loyalty, the loyalty that they crave from these other companies. So they're deciding to leave because they're not getting what they need. And that's completely normal, but that's not the way most hiring managers view it. So it's up to, a lot of times, to the recruiters, to, some of the, our HR professionals, to help encourage managers to see things from a different lens, because a lot of times all they're doing is zoning in on something that somebody told them, that job hopping was negative.
Yeah.
They've heard that over and over again, so that's what they believe.
And if they are so stuck on it and they have such a closed-minded view of it, then maybe you don't, it's not the right person you want to work for anyway. So if
Right.
you can't have like a human conversation and the person
Mhm.
doesn't have the perspective to understand life and listen and have a harder conversation or empathy, then maybe that's a clue.
Right, right. I mean, and I think too, on the flip side, there's people who there's a stigma in staying somewhere too long,
Mhm.
because then they think that you may be resistant to change, or you haven't learned anything, or whatever. So when I have clients who have worked in positions for several years, so maybe they maybe 5 to 10 years they've been at the same job, I really work hard to pull the information out of them that shows their progression. So maybe their workload increased, maybe the project, um, the intensity of that, maybe that changed, the difficulty, the challenges that they were going through. I try to focus on those things so it doesn't look like they did the same thing every single day that they were in that job, because
Right.
that can be negative too. The same way that you're looked at for, for being,
Yeah.
an older worker. Well, the younger workers are experiencing that discrimination as well. So it really goes both ways, but you have to find a way to communicate your value in a way that it resonates with the people that you're trying to work with. So that's where your research is so important, because if you see the team members that are already working for the company, like, ooh, they're a lot younger than me, then you can start to, sort of, you can make assumptions, of course, because that's all it is. You can, assume that, okay, I may need to how can I fit in with this group? How can I still be myself and add value to that team? But, how can I show that, that I'm a good collaborator with people who are not like me? So they may have to go that extra mile to show those examples, on their resumes and give those examples in their interviews. Because if they are older workers, especially when you're looking at people that are 40 plus, technology is always a question. Does this person, know these technologies and all of this? So if you know that that may be a challenge for you or you've heard that in the past, go ahead and address it
Yep.
ahead of time. Show that you've got you've got experience with technology and that you are still modern, that you are keeping up with the times, that that you're prepared for the changes, these, how industries evolve, you're prepared for that.
I love that you're bringing it up because I think people have a challenge. They think about the me from
Mhm.
my perspective, but I love like right away, think about the perspective of the hiring manager, whoever is in front of you, making that decision or interviewing, right?
Mhm.
The context, address the questions that might
Yep.
be in their mind, but they might
Mhm.
not be verbalizing. Don't wait for them to verbalize. Lead with that, especially if you think
Right.
know that there are these, like to the extent possible, answer them. Don't make
Mhm.
them work too hard with your resume in the interviews, really step into their shoes.
Right.
Um,
Right. You're absolutely right.
You brought it up. So, what is your purpose, would you say, at this point of time, Ashley?
I think my purpose has remained the same from childhood. It's to help others do the things that they want to do. I've always been the helper, even if it was in um, grade school and I had people who wanted to, to learn to draw or wanted to learn to play a game. I was always willing to jump in and teach them. So I think to be able to help and teach, that's my purpose because I've always loved to do it. I've always thrived to do it. I'm always the go-to person to do it. Not to say that I don't feel drained, sometimes, but it's for a good reason. If I have to fall and sink into my bed, I'm like, oh, the day is done. I know that I've helped somebody every single day.
And what fills your own cup?
My family, um, candles, coloring, being creative. I make body butter and I'm actually probably going to make a batch this weekend. I love to paint. This is a picture on the wall behind me of something that I painted, and I'm getting ready to redo my office so I can have a space where, I'm feeling more creative, a space that's all my own. It looks completely different, so I can, bring in the fresh ideas. And I like to watch things grow. So I started with plants. So I have plants all over the house, plants and greenery, pretty much everywhere. So, yep, that's what fills my cup.
I love that. So, I think what you're bringing up is also this, that you still have to find your own expression, creative things, that you can't rely 100% on this one thing, this job
Mhm.
or business or whatever it is your thing, is professionally to complete you.
Yeah. Um, I think people just have to really tap into what makes them feel good. And remember, I often will ask clients that are, really going through struggles or challenges at work. Think about the last time you were happy. What were you doing when you were really, really happy? Not when you were just laughing because you went to a comedy show or, whatever. What was the thing that truly gave you butterflies in your stomach, that made you feel like a kid again? What are those things? And then find a way to incorporate that into your day, into your week, or whatever, just so you're fulfilled. And for me, it is, I still like to take care of people because I'm a nurturer by nature. And I like to create potions. So if somebody says, "Oh, my stomach hurts," okay, cool. I'm going to make you a tea. I'm going to put this together, and I love that. But that, and that's what I thought I was going to be doing for a living. I changed my major 5 times in college. I started out doing the biology chemistry thing, and I still love that. And that's part of the reason why I like mixing, up the fragrances and stuff for my body butters. I like making candles. I like doing all of those things. But that's that chemistry piece. I also like watching, medical shows, but that's feeding into something that I thought I would do, but I really found my passion when it came to, teaching people because I can still do the things that I love to do, but that doesn't mean I have to make a living out of them. They are just things to help to ground me again after I feel like I've, had a full day of, helping so many other people. That's a way for me to pour into myself and tap more into my creative energy, which then, drives me to, to face the next day.
Yeah, and I think it's sometimes hard to differentiate because you think the world of possibilities and like, oh my God, maybe I could
Mhm.
do this or
Yep.
grow flowers. And then you see on Instagram, right? Somebody growing flowers,
Hmm.
like this is their thing, or somebody updating houses, right? Now it's their thing. And it seems like the world of possibilities. And then you're like, ah,
Yeah, because when you find your thing, like you know you found it because it feels good all the way around. And regardless of how hard it is, you want to keep doing it. Because when your job gets hard and you don't like it, you don't want to go. You can call in sick. You can be happy that you were fired. I was actually a little bit happy that I had gotten laid off. I didn't like the job anyway. I just wanted to leave it on my terms. And I think that's what upset me more than anything, that I didn't leave on my own terms. But I didn't want that job. I did not want it. But then there were other jobs that, I shed tears when I left because there were things that I really, really loved about those jobs. And then I had to really think about, okay, what was it that you loved? And it was more the relationships with the people. So
yeah.
once, I was able to break free when, I was able to just connect with those people. And so I'd still get a taste of being there, right, at that company, but I don't have to, it's no longer serving me, but I can still hang on to those relationships and those connections that I built that were really the thing that were that's what was holding me there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that's beautiful. So how can first of all, I could keep talking to you. But, like, I feel like I could keep going, but let me ask you this. How can people find you, follow you, and connect with all the beautiful work you're doing?
Yes, so I can be found on my website is writestepresumes.com. So write is just like you write something down, WRITE, stepresumes.com. And I am on Instagram at Right Step Resumes. I am on Facebook at Right Step Resumes. And I am on LinkedIn at Ashley J. Watkins. So I'm Ashley Watkins Thomas, but I have not changed my LinkedIn handle. It's still Ashley J. Watkins.
And I'll link the links that you sent me in the show notes so you can just click on the link and navigate. And thank you for what you're doing, for the ways you're empowering people. And thank you so much for your time, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.